Do Christians really have to tithe? We are exploring 10 strong reasons, and this is number 5. In Matthew 23, verse 23, Jesus mentioned tithing, but the new covenant hadn't begun. Now, Matthew 23, verse 23 says, "What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are careful to tithe even the tiniest income from your herb gardens, but you ignore the more important aspects of the law: justice, mercy, and faith. You should tithe, yes, but do not neglect the more important things. Blind guides, you strain your water so you won't accidentally swallow a gnat, but you swallow a camel." Now, after hearing such a statement, most people think that Jesus was endorsing tithing, but actually, this is an expression of disappointment. Jesus is simply saying, "I'm surprised you guys are doing everything to keep the law, but you lack these very important aspects of the heart." Now, I want to first explain the context of this statement properly so that we don't miss something. Straining the gnat is something that had a deeper context in the culture of those days. A gnat and a camel were both considered to be unclean. A gnat is a small insect which is like a mosquito. So the Jews of those days, to avoid swallowing one in, let's say, drinking water, they would strain the water using a cloth to feel safe. And what about swallowing a camel? Now, this is a humorous, an absurd hyperbole. Jesus takes it to another level to point out that while these leaders were obsessed with following tiny, minor issues and rules, they were completely ignoring the weightier matters of the heart. At that time, Jesus said this, remember, the new covenant hadn't begun. So this means that when Jesus said this statement, the temple system was still running because, yes, he's talking to the Pharisees, the teachers of the law, and they are in the temple area. Now, briefly, I want to talk about the issue with performance. One more verse down, in verse 25, Jesus says, "What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are so careful to clean the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside you're filthy, full of greed and self-indulgence." Verse 26 says, "You blind Pharisee, first wash the inside of the cup and the dish, and then the outside will become clean too." Now, Jesus is careful to say that if we have clean hearts, if we are righteous from the inside, the outside is automatically clean. Jesus never came to improve the old covenant. He never came to stitch it, to try to fix it or, improve it and make it better. No, he came to actually completely remove it so that when we are saved from the inside, the outside will be clean. In Mark 12, starting from verse 41, talks about a widow who gave everything that she had. Jesus sat down opposite the place where the offerings were put and watched the crowd putting their money into the temple treasury. Many rich people threw in large amounts, but a poor widow came and put in 2 very small copper coins worth only a few cents. Calling his disciples to him, Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. They all gave out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in everything, all she had to live on." Now, if tithing was something that had to be a commandment or a continuity in the new covenant, why does then Jesus endorse or speak good about the act of this woman? That when she gave everything she had, however little it was far much more than all these other people who gave huge amounts of money, but all these amounts were just a fraction of their riches. So under the new covenant, we are told to give freely because God is looking at the heart of the giver. The one who gives with a cheerful heart, however little it may be, does well. So my argument here is, if Jesus talked about tithing or mentioned it once and you say, hey, look, Jesus actually said we must tithe. How about everything else that he mentioned or did, like observing Sabbath and he himself being circumcised, but Christians no longer do those today? How do we cherry pick from among these things and we say this is still necessary and this is no longer necessary? So yes, Jesus acknowledged tithing, but this was still under the law, and he was talking to the Jews, the Pharisees, the people to whom the law was given at Mount Sinai. I'll be back with reason number 6. Stay with me. Thank you so much for watching.